Welcome to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by HAYVN, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the HAYVN Hubcast. I'm your host, Nancy Sheed, and today I'm excited to be speaking with Jacqueline Lieberman. Hello, Jacqueline, as you have a mouthful of water.
Hello, Nancy.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Jacqueline, she is a truth-first brand strategist. She challenges organizations to stop chasing clever campaigns and build from the inside out. Through her strategy workshops and velocity dinners, she draws out what makes a company unique and turns it into positioning that's impossible to copy. I love that you are even walking your talk in your own positioning in terms of what you do. It is very clear. I'm so excited to dive in.
Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a fan of HAYVN, so I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm excited. So, Jacqueline, we've talked before, and we're in the worlds where some of the work we do overlaps. You're more in the sort of organization versus the personal, but there's still challenges in positioning. How do you view what a brand strategist does in this day and age versus sort of what traditional brand strategy was even 10 years ago, or back when somebody was majoring in brand strategy or learning about brand strategy?
Well, this might sound controversial, but I don't think it changed in that fundamentally a strategist is meant to be a detective of sorts or like an excavator, and you're constantly mining for the truth. And whether it's a brand truth, a customer truth, an audience truth, or a category truth, the only thing that's changed over the years is the methods that strategists are using to get to that. But really, finding that insight across what we call the ABCs, the audience, the brand, and the category, and then even a second C, which is culture. Fundamentally, those are the insights that every strategist uses as part of their practice.
I love the idea of the excavator of truth. I'm going to take a step back because I always like to say, like, is this something that from day one you knew what you wanted to do or be, or were you an extractor of truth in other ways before you became a brand strategist?
That's funny. So I knew I wanted to be in marketing and advertising, and I found myself in a non-marketing position at Priceline.com back in the day. And one of the things that I was doing in my role was listening to customer service phone calls and trying to get to the heart of why was the refund rate going through the roof? And so
I was about to say, I was probably one of those calls looking for the refund.
Yeah. And still my claim to fame, by the way, still right now, if you were to go on the site, my claim to fame was, can't we just put a button? Because at the time, the button said, make your request now. Even though people were putting credit cards down, they still didn't think they were buying a ticket. So I said, why can't we just have a button that says, buy my tickets now? And to this day, that's still there. So It was really always about listening to the audience, what they want, where's the confusion, what creates hesitation, what do they wish you would say and do instead. And that kind of launched me into being a traditional strategic planner at an agency. And that's really where most of my career was spent. And I found myself at this agency called Story Worldwide, where story was the foundation of the strategies that we use for our clients instead of like the decoration at the end, like the nice campaigns. So that to me always resonated. But I did think, and I did see in doing all of that for over 20 years, that companies still kept reinventing their story every single year. And that was the part that never sat well with me, because the stories ended up being so lofty that they would tend to collapse when the sales team tried to use them in real conversations. So it was very much like a marketing exercise. It's like the story sounds great, the campaign looks great, but it fell apart in the real world. So I kind of started thinking, like, if I was going to do this, I would do it differently. And that's kind of where I wanted to start BrandCrudo, stop the cycle of annual reinvention, and really focus on the company DNA
Mm.
and really understand what makes this company unique, distinctly unique. And let's build an enduring position around that. And then we could tell compelling stories out in market. But that was kind of my approach.
Yeah. I feel like that sort of also gets to sort of what's changed or what are the biggest challenges or what frustrates you in this industry. And I love you said DNA and you also called out culture. And I think that is a piece that many organizations, no matter how big or small, neglect. They don't see how much impact it has. They typically, the leaders at the top can't really name it or they don't really see it. How do you dig into that or help them define that or see that it's how critical it is in who they are?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do, and this is never going to change. So even if, I mean, not if, when AI becomes even more prevalent in our day-to-day work, I am still going to want to do one-on-one interviews with executives, with the engineers, with the salespeople, with research and development. I need to speak to and get under the hood of what's on the mind of the people in this company. Where do they see the company now? How do they want to see it transition? What's that brand evolution? So I'm going to be using brand and company kind of interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
So I start with really understanding, where do they see themselves now and where do they want to go? And what is that delta? What's stopping them from that evolution? And to me, that's always having human conversations with the people there. So whether it's one-on-one interviews, my strategy workshops are all designed to have 12 to 14 of the company stakeholders in the room. And we spend 7 hours in a room together. And you bet that something is going to happen during that day where people are going to say some things. And guess what? They're going to walk out heard, aligned. And that's how you know where the culture, when they come into the room, it could be that they have a very strong culture, but each department has their own idea
Mm-hmm.
or where they need to go. Plus, they all have their own agendas. So that's why in my workshops, I always say to the project sponsor, I don't want just marketing people in this room. We need to have all facets of the company here. So let's pick the 14 people who represent that, because otherwise it's going to be just a marketing exercise. And then that's where the momentum always stalls, is when it just becomes a marketing project and it's not infiltrated into the rest of the company. Does that make sense?
100%. Well, that's the whole thing about culture is it's across it's not in one department. It permeates. And if it's unaligned, confusing, or out of sync, no matter how great your messaging might be, if the culture or the leadership is not all working together. So I love that's an integral a part of what you do. Jacqueline, I love that you use the word brand and company synonymously. Have you had to educate people, though, about how that works versus what I think non-marketing people feel about brand?
100%. And it definitely relates to the sales and marketing relationship. So marketing, they obviously live and breathe the brand. When you're looking at sales teams or product teams, when they think brand, they think tagline and they think campaign. And of course, that's part of it. but they view it as a very specific tactic where brand, as marketers know, is a living, breathing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really kind of the biggest disconnect that I always see, is that brand is often equated to a campaign tactic. And we know campaign tactics have a very specific beginning, middle, and end. And that's not really what a brand is about. It's not just a logo.
Right. And often aren't aligned with the brand as
Mm-hmm.
well, which is the other big disconnect. You work with companies to say this is how you're different. How is what you do or what you're doing now different than, again, if somebody who's in marketing knows there's the traditional focus groups, right? Like, what are you doing differently in this day and age to really get to these truths and to really dig in and help people find, or help your clients find these nuggets and these truths, especially when things are starting to sound more and more the same?
Yeah. Well, that's really where my DNA method approach kind of comes in. So I help companies stop chasing the clever campaign, reinvent from the inside out, and build from the inside out. So I don't invent positioning for any of my clients. I just find it, I excavate it, I uncover it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for every company. So just like a human being, every company has their own DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we define DNA? I define it as, why does this company exist? What problem was it even meant to solve? Like, where did it come from? Why was it founded? What won't it compromise on? Who's the company that they keep? Their surrounding people that they stand with. So every company has those answers. And that's really where, when I talk about a brand DNA and company DNA, once we find out what that is, and whether that's through interviews or workshops or the velocity dinners that we do, once we find those answers, then you have the strong foundation upon which you can plan once and pivot forever off of that, in terms of campaigns, how you show up in your sales and marketing collateral, and how you show up anywhere in keynotes. So that's really, when I say DNA, it's about company behaviors begets company reputation, which begets actual sales. And
Mm.
that's where the ROI really comes in, because you're not just coming up with it out of thin air. It's already there.
Right. I keep going back to the excavation. The other thing that I find is it typically requires somebody from the outside who has better digging skills than those of us, than the person that's
Yeah.
actually on the inside. They can navel gaze all they want, right? But they just don't have that outside perspective, and they haven't taken in all the other viewpoints. I guess that's my long-winded way of saying you almost need a third party like you. Getting teams to do it themselves, it comes with such inherent biases, agendas, perspectives, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's why I love being a consultant, and I love what I do. And even consultant, I really do truly hate that word. Like, I think we need a rebranding ourselves, because it's not like,
Excavator, advising
yeah, like
excavator,
something, because
DNA
yeah, DNA
queen.
chaser, I don't know,
Yeah.
something. But no, I agree with you, because I have the benefit of objectivity. So I get to come in and hear my clients' business problems, marketing problems, and craft a solution around that. So that's the other thing, is that, so when I hear whatever their challenges are, there's not just like one way to crack it. There could be several ways, but the through line to all of it is that I am coming at it with fresh eyes, and I have this benefit of objectivity. And what that brings me, and I can give you an example where in workshops, and this has happened It's happened in almost every workshop that I've done, and I've done over 1,000 of them in so far in my career. And in doing these, the differentiator is always in the room, and it's always the thing that the company takes for granted. They always say, well, we have the highest quality merchandise, we have the best quality control out there, and inevitably the whole table, the whole conference room nods and they're like, yeah, that's just the way that we do it. And I'm sitting there because I've now looked at their category walking into the room that day. Of course, I've done a category audit. I understand who their competitors are. So I'm hearing all of them tell me what they're saying are entry stakes. They're like, well, that's just how we've always done it. And I raise my hand, I go, guys, I've looked at your category. I've seen what they're saying out there and what they say are their unique positions. Nobody is saying what you're saying. So I know that you're in it day to day and you think that this is just the way that you do things. But I have news for you. That's actually unique. It's actually your differentiator. So all of a sudden, I see the light bulbs go off in everybody's brain in the room. And they're like, yeah, really? And I say, yeah. So let's talk more about that. And part of what I do in these workshops is I'm constantly saying, well, tell me more about that and explain and tell me a story about that, because every company says that they have high quality, right? So you want to say, or every company says that they're innovative. And I say, great. Tell me, how are you specifically innovative? Give me an example. Tell me a story about it. Tell me how you have a product that directly relates to this high quality or this entry stake that we're talking about that's actually unique. So all of that, by the end of the day, they're walking out going, okay, now I see why we were brought in that day. Because of course they're brought into the room, and in the beginning of the day, they're like, this
7
is just a
hours talking about themselves. Blah.
They're like, oh, this is a marketing exercise.
Exactly.
Before like this, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, inevitably, everybody's like, okay, now I see where we're going with this.
I love that. And you went actually the complete other direction of the question I was going to ask you, which is in your distilling of truths. I love that you're sort of pulling out what's already there versus sometimes are you pulling out things that they don't want to hear? Or when you bring in all the stakeholders, like, is there sometimes, or is there always a common denominator that you can get people to, or a thread you can pull on to? And I say this from experience of having been in branding sessions where you can see the disconnect between what the strategist says, and I've been on both sides of the table, right? And you're like, that's not landing for me. Or you can see that it's not landing quite exactly with the client. What does that experience look like to you? Or you always get to that common denominator and that's never a problem for you?
No, I mean, well, there's definitely, especially in workshops, there's always like some sort of dissension where you're going to see people say, well, I don't agree with that, or I don't think that's really unique to us. And again, me being the objective third party here, it's my job to not just let them talk to each other, because I need to give them space to do exactly that and do the debates. But it's my job to land the plane for them and say, okay, so in this discussion, what's really true versus just what you've been thinking or is category jargon? Or can we really stand this up and say that this is a very unique position for us because nobody else is doing it? Can we call BS on this or not? And so very often it's like, well, we're not leaving until we know that whether or not we could call BS on this. And it's my job to not just be a polite facilitator. It's my job to make sure that what we're putting on paper is something that everybody feels really good about, but is also grounded in something that is actually true about the product, the service, the company.
Right. That they can live, walk, talk.
Yes.
and represent. Shifting, not exactly from there, but something you've recently wrote, you've just mentioned AI. You shared with your audience and you're a lover of AI as much as you're a truth seeker. You can hold both of those spaces, which I love. You shared sort of a recent experience with AI, sort of helping you craft or working out a positioning statement. Can you share that story? Because I really loved how you flipped the way to work with AI in such a productive way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for reading that thought leadership piece. So it really was about I'm doing my normal thing, which is I had a workshop. Now the work really begins where I'm taking all the sheets of all the exercises, not just synthesizing it, but really analyzing, okay, what did we mean in all of these discussions? And what's the implication for their new direction right now? So I'm in the middle of doing that. And I landed on a positioning line that I thought not only sounded great, it encapsulated everything that we talked about. So I put it into Claude and with some context, of course. And it was basically like, yeah, this is amazing. You've really carved out a whole new direction.
You nailed it.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I mean, it did everything but like give me that like, way to go emoji. And so for 30 seconds, I felt really great and validated. And then I was like, wait a minute. I started to become really suspicious. And I was like, okay. I'm like, now, so I go back to Claude and I say, well, that sounds great and everything, but I think there's potentially holes in this positioning. And I want you to argue all the ways that this thing could fall apart. And then it literally did that. So that to me was such a eye-opening experience of really making sure that we use AI as a sparring partner and not just like let me outsource my whole brain and put it into AI and then copy paste whatever it says. So that was a huge light bulb moment for me. And I think that not only is it a cautionary tale to make sure that we never do that and we shouldn't do that, but it's also, I think, we can use AI to make us sharper.
Right, exactly.
To constantly vet these arguments of like, if I really believed in that position, let's say, for example, even if Claude came back with all the ways that it could fall apart, if I could still defend it after going back and forth with the bot, then I still feel good about it. So I'm not suggesting that just because that your bots are going to find holes in it, that you should abandon it. That's not the goal. The goal is to work all of that out with your bot before whatever you're producing sees the light of day, because then you could really defend it in real time yourself.
Exactly. And where I'm going to make some assumptions is, right? Like think about the time AI may have helped you synthesize some of the data, right? But I'm now going to say that we still may spend the same or more in using AI as that partner to make us stronger, is what I'm also finding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The back and the forth, the pushing it as opposed to just spitting it out and being like, oh, that's better than what I put in. Thanks, let's go.
Right.
I especially find that in thinking about voice or positioning for either myself or for other clients in terms of, no, you still haven't got it. You still haven't got it. What about this?
Right.
So that fine tuning.
Yeah.
But I love that you're holding space for both of these things as opposed to AI is good or bad. And I just think you alluded to, I'm in the camp of it's here. So how do we use it well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of AI, and I think this is such an exciting time to be a knowledge worker. I think the rule of thumb that is easy to remember is to use AI as a starting point, not an end point. So if we use it as a starting point, then that means that we get to do all of those mental gymnastics of going back and forth with our AI bots, as opposed to what you just said, which is you put in input, they give you an output, and then you run with it immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
In going to the other end of the spectrum, we have AI and we have this unhuman tool that we use. And then here on the other end of the spectrum, you were in the room with people. I also just want to call out another way you engage with people, which I probably should have wrapped in earlier, but can you speak a little bit about how your focus groups, some of your focus groups, particularly these dinners, look differently and why and how they work in terms of, again, it doesn't sound like the standard get in a focus room, you're behind a mirrored glass and
Right.
everybody has to answer their surveys.
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you for asking about them. So Velocity Dinners came about when a CMO that I was working with, he was a new CMO. So of course, as a new CMO, he was given by his department, here's a PowerPoint of who our ideal customer profile is. So he has this PowerPoint and he asked me what I thought about them. And I said, well, they do a good job of telling you what these people don't like about your technology and their pain points, but it doesn't tell you at all who they are as people, what really makes them tick, what do they really worry about? And he's like, yeah, exactly. He goes, how am I supposed to market to people if I don't know any of those things? So that was 2 years ago when I invented the Velocity Dinners series, which is where most companies, they're making big calls, whether it's a rebrand, a product launch, a new service. And a lot of them do it assuming what buyers might think, what their buyers think. And if they do a traditional focus group, a focus group is very much a performative setting where
Exactly.
the people who are answering questions, not on purpose, they're answering questions, but they're doing it because they're performing for this moderator. The dinners are designed in contrast to be the opposite of that experience. So my clients hire me to host their customers or their prospects to a beautiful dinner setting. And the guests want to be there because they know that they're coming because they're sitting next to their peers, like-minded peers. So the thing that all the guests end up sharing is that there's not a conflict of interest or anything there competitive wise. They all share some similar C-suite or leadership title. And the reason why I want those people there, and they could be in all different verticals and different business categories, and that's okay. And that's the point. The common denominator is that they all are around the same title. So they all have the same concerns. They all have the same worries. And that's where the real rich conversation happens. And over dinner, questions are asked by me and they're answered, and guests are talking candidly about why they buy, where they hesitate, what they wish their vendor partners would say and do instead. Or they'll talk about really what is on their mind, which is technology is moving so fast. I'm truly afraid of getting left behind. And then all of a sudden, you see everybody around the table like nodding. And I'm like, okay, so that seems to be something everybody's concerned about. Let's talk about it. So then all of a sudden, we'll spend 15 minutes just talking on that topic alone. And so this is the unfiltered environment that you never get information like this from a survey or a Zoom call.
Right.
And what my client leaves with from these dinners is that I generate a report after the dinner, and they really get to understand what actually drives the decisions that their buyers are making before they spend $1 on messaging or a launch or a launch plan, because that's whether it's a CMO that's hiring me because they need this buyer intel for their dinner, or it's the head of sales hiring me to host their prospects because They want to understand, like, what's the holdup with this deal? Like, what is it that we're not doing? How are we not serving them? And the heads of sales need to know that. And a lot of times on a sales call, people, again, are performing versus there's nothing that can replace sharing a meal with strangers in an intimate setting and the conversation that comes after.
You are preaching to the choir, sister. You are preaching to the choir. Well, I could chat all day.
Yeah, same.
But I love how you are bringing this kind of truth excavation with very sort of human-centered focus and authenticity, while at the same time looking forward and looking at the big picture and embracing what's coming down the pipeline and helping people or entities see themselves and their brands in these real lights. Do you know what I mean? You didn't you didn't magically make stuff up, but these sort of real things that are already existing. It's such a wonderful approach to how to do this work. So thank you, Jacqueline, for sharing it with us. If people want to know more about you and the Velocity Dinners and BrandCrudo, how do they reach you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love this conversation and
yay,
it's so fun. So people can find me on brandcrudo.com and there's info about the Velocity Dinners and also on LinkedIn. So just Jacqueline Lieberman on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's it.
And sometimes you share written words, sometimes you share audio, but I would say get on Jacqueline's list if you're listening. Anyway, thank you again, Jacqueline. This was a treat. We'll have to come back, continue the conversation, but appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for having me, Nancy.
And that's another episode of the HAYVN Hubcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode. Make sure you're a follower on your favorite platform. And we always love positive reviews. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the HAYVN Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. HAYVN is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. HAYVN is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the HAYVN community online at hayvn.com. That's HAYVN.com. HAYVN Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.